Guys, I made a video last night, pretty much explaining why to fans and things like that I was stopping the magazine. And I mean, it's a pretty long story. I do owe you a lot of you guys an explanation. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long story. Can't really say in a lot of letters. That would be a lot of letters. So, I think that's about it. Don't judge it too harshly. If you do, I don't care. And yeah, that's about it. There we go. Well, hi. Where should I start? I guess on my name. Well, my name is Jamarcus, also known as Avichi. I am creator of JetLipheeMusic magazine. For a lot of you, some of you guys might know who I am. Others might not. For the ones who are just tuning in and don't know who we are, my name is Jamarcus, but again, I'm also known as Avichi. I'm creator and CEO of JetLipheeMusic magazine. It's pretty much a digital indie music magazine for most, independent artists. Where should I begin? Well, I guess back home in Tennessee, JetLife actually originated from one of my favorite artists, which is Currency. His was spelled actually a little different from mine, L-I-F-E, and without trying to be sued, of course. I actually created something a little bit different, with it being L-I-P-H-E-E, just to try to throw a little bit of my own style into it, but I liked the name JetLife. It had meaning, luxury, culture, simple but complex. So it pretty much originated back home in Tennessee as I was getting ready to go off to college down there. And I don't know, it just actually started out as a music production company. I was the only artist under myself. Actually it was me and my sister back home in Tennessee. Her name's Heaven, but they call her Heavy Low for short. So it was pretty much just us. And we wanted to create something different, something stylish, but, not too city-like. So it pretty much originated from there. And I never really forced it to be anything. It kind of just grew along with my life, Well, it's somehow, and I actually got the idea from a good mentor of mine. His name's Gary Coles. Check him out sometime on Facebook, Gary Coles. But it actually occurred to me that I could help independent artists out the way, how can I put this? The way majors help out theirs, So I decided to come up with my very own magazine company, digital of course, because records show that physical sales are actually going down the more that internet, gets popular on apps and things like that. So a lot of people ask me as to why I don't have physical copies, and it just goes to show that's not a winning market, Well, fast forward from there, we have pretty much the third season of JetLipheeMusic magazine, and a lot of people are asking me as to why, giving up, or why this might, possibly be the last, season, or, you aren't getting enough fans or notice or anything like that. And I mean, it's not that. type of love all over the world, so it's not really bad. But I don't know. I've actually been going through a lot of stuff lately. A lot of people want to know as to why, it's pretty much being dropped so late. It was actually supposed to come out I want to say middle of last year, right after season 2 had actually dropped, but I've actually been going through a few things, personal wise, and it's one of the reasons why I'm pretty much taking my time out to make this video. So a lot of people want to know why, and this is actually why. So I want to say early October. Let me say September, late September, early October. Somewhere within that time, I had a family member that passed from cancer, and it wasn't the best feeling in life. I moved to New York. I planned on doing big things. I had everything set. All my ducks, lined up in a row. And I guess life just didn't see it to be that way. Moved back. Heard my older brother, who was getting knee surgery, actually passed on the table. Doctors don't understand why they believe it's from malnourishment, but he was pretty much dead, flatlined for a while before they got his heart pumping again. And it's actually one of the reasons why I'm back in my hometown, Rockford, Illinois now, because of that. So I came back, a family member passed, moved to New York, had to move back, and I don't know, it's just like once I returned, it was like one thing after another, so that happened, and I don't know, I just ended up getting my old job back, and I just felt like my life was stuck in one of the longest standstills ever. And if you know me personally, if you know me at all, if you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, anything like that, you know that I'm like one of the most positive people like you will ever meet, and I'm a very strong-willed person. It really takes a lot to break me, but I just felt like around that time so much stuff was going on that I kind of just started breaking down, piece by piece. And I don't know, it's like one thing after another, that happened, and I ended up getting engaged, and that didn't work out. She cheated on me with one of her exes or whatever. So from there, it's just really seemed like depression was like the biggest turmoil of my life. So I just really started sinking lower and lower. I started second guessing myself on everything I did. I don't know, I just really felt like at one point in time I like really wanted to give up, so I said, hey, I tried to actually keep this idea away for a very long time, interviewing celebrities, because my magazine wasn't meant for celebrities. It was meant for all independent artists around the world to share their work, show their passion, the things they created, the things that they put on a pedestal, within their life, within their career, as one of their highest, goals that they could have most definitely, checked off, off of their life list. So, and I wanted to be a part of that and help them gain, those stepping stones to, checking that off of their life list. So I began contacting, acting agencies and managements and things like that, and I started to begin to interview, celebrities, actors, rappers, entrepreneurs, things like that, people like that, and I don't know, I just felt like at that time, at that point in my life, I was so far into depression that not even that, could pull me out. It was like a glory stepping stone. But I was so blind to the fact that I let all of my downfalls and all of my fails pretty much run my life. So, even after that, I don't know, I just still didn't take it too serious. I kind of wanted to give up after a while. I was doing, pretty much had shot the beginning season of the Corleones, and a lot of you guys know, that was my own little mini episode, my own little mini series. I was actually I think I was actually the first person in Rockford to actually begin a mini series. Yeah, I think I was like the first person. So that never went through, because of the depression. I really let it get the best of me. So it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm still doing. So it pretty much left off from that point, and I began to involve myself, I guess, mentally and emotionally into a very bright, wonderful, smart Latina woman that I know personally. And I don't know, I guess one of the reasons I did so was to take my mind off of all the bad, because it seemed like that was, the only good that, was actually going and, going right in my lifetime. We started as friends, and I don't know, I guess just me, really started to use that as I wouldn't say coping mechanism, but pretty much as an excuse to not to not confront everything that was going on. So I pretty much end up doing that, and from there, I don't know, JetLife just really started spiraling down, and I don't know, I felt like I couldn't save it, so that didn't work out with her. So the next thing I could really do it was like a last minute gesture of a save, was to start recording music with a good friend of mine, and he goes by G Dotty. I call him God Dotty because G Dotty sounds fucking retarded, but I don't know, we just started recording music together. He had his own Click Money Gang, it was me at JetLife, and I guess I was more of a mentor than manager wise, as far as having him as an artist under JetLife for a while. It was more like a mentor thing. Like, I can show you this and this, but I'm not gonna do it for you 100%, and I don't know, that didn't work out. So I was like really starting to fall into depression, where I felt like I couldn't get back out. Like, I started questioning everything, so I just completely stopped running, JetLipheeMusic magazine. Like, everything I did up until that point, I just stopped completely. Relationships wasn't working out for me, catching interest wasn't working out, business wasn't going well, the numbers that I had starting off, were kind of failing, and I started to dabble in a little, here and there. I really started to dabble into something I thought would get me quicker to my goal than actual taking years of, building and falling and building, and after a while, I really had to stop and look like, hey, this is what I wanted, this is what I want, I'm gonna stop now before any extra harm is done. So I stopped, and I don't know, I guess after after that, I really didn't feel like I had a lifeline left. So I just kind of gave up all aspects, and my dream of owning this very national, international wise digital magazine, and I pretty much just gave up all thoughts of music and pretty much helped other artists. I really forgot that it was bigger than me. It was more than just me. I started it because I wanted to make a difference within the industry, and I kind of forgot that value of it all. So I don't know, I really started to fall hard into depression. After a while, I tried to commit suicide twice in 1 week, and from there I just felt like I couldn't get back up to where I once was. Like, it's hard falling from glory to a world that you were so unfamiliar with, because you were such a strong person, and whatever came your way, you either bottled it all inside, or you pretty much wiped it off like it was nothing, like it was never there, and never confronted it. And that was my biggest thing. I never confronted the issues and everything that was revolving around me and everything that was going on. I never took the time out to say, hey, I need to talk to somebody, or this is what I need to do in order to continue to be successful. I never did that. I really started to fall a victim of fame and failure, and from there, I really felt like I stated, I couldn't get up from there. Like, how do you get back to a place you once were so high in the sky, And I don't know, I started making, I just kind of forced myself to make new friends, because I was so tired of being alone. I would come home from work, I ended up getting a new place, so I would come home from work and go straight up to my room and lock myself in my room. It was just like being social was just something that I only did with the fake mask to hide behind how miserable I was on a day-to-day basis. I would wake up, and when I opened my door, it was like an automatic smile. It was to hide all the pain and the sadness that I was going through, all the physical and mental pain that I brought myself, So I guess after that I kind of, spoke with myself, and, I kind of said, hey, this is not us, this is not me, this is not JetLife. Like, I want people to remember me by something, and if they don't remember me by JetLipheeMusic magazine, then what will they remember me for? So I kind of forced myself to start making friends, and from there I met a very interesting woman, and her name's Lindsay. She's actually a really good person. She's a really great person, and just by talking to her and talking to another friend I'm not going to mention, they really brought to my attention, like, think about how much pain you would bring your own family, and think about how much more disgrace you would bring upon your own dynasty. And I kind of just was like, wow, like, you're right. Like, what do I do from there? So I was like, okay, I want to hop back on a horse. I'm going to face this thing head on. I'm going to make it happen, because if I don't, no one else will. And my biggest fear has always been to be left behind. Like, that was the only thing that drove me to graduate on time. Like, that was the only thing that drove me to go to college. Like, that was the only thing that drove me to, move out of state more than once. And that was the feeling of being left behind. I don't want that, in my life. I don't want my kids to, you know, come with me back to my hometown, and they look around and they're like, Dad, why does that man have a nice car and we don't? And I'm just like, it's no way to explain that to a child. You know what I mean? So from there, I kind of, I really started working hard back on it. I was meditating, I was working out, I was, taking precaution steps to physically and mentally get myself back ready to run a company that has once fallen from where it was. So I started interviewing more celebrities. I started, looking even harder, for artists around the world. I started redesigning, shirts, magazine covers. I started, recording more music, writing more music for, different artists. And I don't know, it's just like from that point on, I felt like I could do this again. And I was still facing, hard depression daily because, I recently had a, little cousin that just passed, from suicide. So that kind of knocked me off my stratum just a little bit because, thinking like, hey, I just went through that, but knowing somebody personally that has gone through that, hurts you more than anything. And a lot of people don't realize this. Like, they can see someone they know or love die in front of them, or see somebody die in pain and agony, like cancer or anything, but it doesn't really hit home until you've gone through something and made it out. But somebody you care for and you love so much has gone through the same and was unable to make it out of that dark side, so it really hit me some, and it kind of threw me off my saddle a bit. So JetLipheeMusic magazine was kind of like, it was iffy, it was here and there. I wasn't sure, from that point on, I said, hey, I don't think I can do this anymore. This is the third season, I'm done. So I started putting all my time and all my effort and every piece of energy I had left into finishing this third season up. But as I did so, I started noticing, I started building a bigger fan base. I started, noticing, I started interacting with fans more. I really started, gaining topics of conversations and being able to interact in topics of conversations, whether it be political wise or, it's, 90s hip hop or, acting or anything like that. I really started, interacting in life, period. So from there, it was kind of like, okay, well, it seems like everything is going pretty good, let's keep it going. So I did so, and I'm still doing so now, and I don't know, it just really feels like, this is what I was meant to do in life. Like I stated, this is not a path that I forced. This is not something I, just woke up one day and said, hey, I want to do. It's just something that happened, and from there, I just pretty much embraced it as, my own, and, from there, I just started building. But one of the biggest things, and still is to this day, is that I don't know, I just don't feel as though Jet Life, is just ready to quit. I don't personally feel like it's time to give up. I've came so far from nothing to something, and I don't know, I don't think we're going anywhere for a long time. So and with that being stated, Jet Life, I mean, it's going to be a struggle, it is, but it's just something I'm not going to give up too easy. A lot of people, helped me realize that, you know what I mean? I mean, I've been scammed, I've been cheated out of money, things like that, but that's not going to stop me, I fight depression daily, and I mean, I fight it daily. So, one thing I wanted to do outside of the magazine to help with this, to help with progression, is to somehow help out with, a depression type. What's the word for it? A charity, depression type charity, things like that to help out with. I want to run a label international wise, and as far as being the USA, for kids, young kids with talent. I mean, I have a lot that I want to do, and there's a lot I'm going to get accomplished because I always accomplish what I set my mind to. Like, that's a part of Jet Life. Like, we make dreams come true, no matter how hard the battle is. In the end, if you never stop, then you have nothing to worry about, because every failure comes with 3 steps forward of progression. So, with that being done and with that being said, I mean, Jet Life has come a long way. It has. And there's times where I want to quit, and there's times where I want to give up. But I sit back and I think, if I give up, who's going to notice? Who's going to notice? So, yeah, that's a pretty small piece of documentary on JetLipheeMusic magazine. 3rd season is going to be dropping at the end of this month. If you've been watching up to now, I thank you guys. Thank you to all my loyal fans out there that's been rocking with me so far. That has never given up on me. That's encouraged me to keep going. People think actually that like all my Twitter followers and all my Instagram followers and shit like that is like bought, and it's not. Like, I've had that Twitter account since Twitter first started, and I stopped using it and didn't start using it until like my junior year of high school. So you gotta kind of think about the time gap in between. And from there, I just started building it. I've had people follow me and unfollow me. It still happens to this day. Probably a couple minutes ago. I mean, you never know. But I don't know. One thing and I'm going to end it like this. One thing I've always asked every celebrity that I've ever interviewed is, what would you like to tell your fans and your followers and your family? And I guess, me personally, to never give up. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. And there's times where you're going to want to kill yourself, literally. It's going to be times where depression is such a strong entity on you and your soul that you feel as though you aren't meant in this world. And when you feel like that, get up, take a jog, take a breather, meditate, do something out of your ordinary schedule that you normally don't do, and incorporates something different. If you're used to, listening to music all the time, how about jam, reggae music while painting, a portrait of anything, a dog, stick figure. I mean, it's not the easiest road. Success in life is not the easiest road. But one thing I can tell you is never stop trying, because in the end, when you get time to take a breather and you have time to manifest and think about how far you've came, just the journey alone it's going to bring so much more value to everything you've done and everything you continue to do, that it's going to leave, I wouldn't say the slightest, but the heaviest golden perfection feeling in your heart and your soul, because you know that you never gave up. You know that you kept going and fighting that fight even when it seemed like there was no possible way you would win. So, again, this is your boy Jamarcus, coming from Rockford, Illinois. If you've been watching this far, thank you guys. If you've been following me and rocking with me and supporting me, for like the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years that JetLipheeMusic Production, JetLipheeMusic Magazine has been rocking. I mean, I do appreciate that. Thank all of you guys, because I would not be anything without you guys. So most definitely, it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. I gotta get up in a couple of hours to go back to work, but I just wanted to say thanks.